The top stories tonight in Y News. Members of the ruling PDP-Laban party are pushing President Rodrigo Duterte to run for vice president in the 2022 national elections.
Travelers from Vietnam could still enter the Philippines despite the news of a hybrid COVID-19 variant.
Poorly performing local government units will get less vaccine allocation according to the Department of Health.
And South Africa returns to a stricter lockdown amid surging cases.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. We are now reporting live from Commonwealth Avenue in Quezon City. Today is Monday, May 31, 2021. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country and in other parts of the world. I am Harleen Delgado.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I'm Angelo Castro III.
First in the news. The National Council of the Partido Demokratiko Pilipino Lakas ng Bayan or PDP-Laban adopts a resolution convincing President Rodrigo Duterte to run for vice president in the 2022 national elections. But the PDP-Laban's National Executive Director insists that the said assembly is illegal. Nel Maribohok will give us the details live. Yes, Nel?
Arlene Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi, the Vice Chairman of the Partido Demokratiko Pilipino, Lakas ng Bayan or PDP-Laban, led the National Assembly of the ruling party today in Cebu. There are 5 agenda on the list. These include the COVID-19 response of the Duterte administration and the preparation for the 2022 national elections. The highlights of the event, with more than 200 attendees, is the PDP-Laban National Council votes to adopt a resolution convincing President Rodrigo Duterte to run as vice president in the 2022 polls.
The text of this resolution read as follows. Resolution to convince the party chairman, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, to run for vice president in the 2022 national elections, and for President Rodrigo Duterte to choose his running mate for president in the 2022 national elections.
Earlier, presidential spokesman Harry Roque said the president will announce soon his decision regarding his plan on the coming elections.
A message from God. If the president thinks it is God's will, he will make the proper announcement in due course.
PDP-Laban National Council proposes setting another meeting on July 16 and a National Assembly on July 17 to elect new party officers, all subject to the approval of President Duterte as party chairman. But according to PDP-Laban's National Executive Director Ronald Munsayak, the National Assembly violates the party rules. He said, according to the party's constitution, the vice chairman becomes acting chairman if the current chairman becomes incapacitated, suspended, or resigns. Since the PDP-Laban chairman is not incapacitated, the vice chairman cannot usurp the functions of the chairman. Munsayak said it is better for all PDP-Laban members to just wait for the party chairman and the party president to jointly act on the matter of calling for a national council meeting. Arlene?
Thank you, Nel Maribohok, reporting live from San Mateo, Rizal. A political analyst believes that the conflict between 2 officials of the ruling Partido Demokratiko Pilipino Lakas ng Bayan or PDP-Laban may cause division to the party. Meanwhile, aspiring candidates are starting to surface with 5 months left before the start of filing of candidacy for the 2022 national elections. Nel Maribohok explains why.
The change of leadership looms in President Rodrigo Duterte's ruling political party, the Partido Demokratiko Pilipino, Lakas ng Bayan or PDP-Laban. This after PDP-Laban Vice Chair and Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi decided to proceed with the party's National Assembly despite PDP-Laban President and Senator Manny Pacquiao's call to ignore it. But according to Presidential Spokesman Harry Roque, the President has authorized the party's National Assembly.
Itong pinatawag na pagpupulong ng PDP-Laban ay inauthorize po ng ating Presidente bilang party chairman ng PDP-Laban.
According to Professor Dennis Coronacion, a political analyst, a division is imminent in the ruling party if the conflict will remain unsolved.
Can lead to a worst-case scenario. The worst-case scenario, we can see a split between the two factions. Tapos, both factions are going to support different candidates. So, nakikita ko yan, yung unang faction kay Sara Duterte, yung pangalang faction kay Pacquiao.
Some PDP-Laban members call out Senator Pacquiao over his criticisms against President Duterte's policy in the West Philippine Sea issue. Some critics say that the senator has a plan to run in the presidential elections. According to Coronacion, the possible aspirants in the 2022 polls have started to surface.
Medyo late na yan based on our mga history ng mga election-related activities.
Aside from Senator Bongo, the name of Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte is now on the list of the possible presidential candidates. Last Saturday, former Senator Bongbong Marcos visited Mayor Duterte, fueling speculations of a Duterte-Marcos tandem in 2022 polls.
Magkakatuluyan yung tandem ni Sara Duterte sa Bongbong Marcos. Papado na si Bongo sa mangyayari kay Bongo.
Senate President Vicente Sotto III also said he is considering running for vice presidency. He said some groups have been approaching him and asked to reconsider running for higher office. The Senate President said he will have better answer by the third quarter of this year. Meanwhile, the opposition coalition Isambayan will announce their potential candidates on June 12, Independence Day. Vice President Leni Robredo is not sure if she will be the standard bearer of the Liberal Party in the 2022 elections. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, we serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Health allays public fears over a reported hybrid coronavirus variant in Vietnam that officials say spreads quickly by air and is a combination of the Indian and British strains. Janice Inhente reports why.
The Philippine government has not yet imposed any restrictions on travelers from Vietnam, despite reports of a hybrid COVID-19 variant in the country. Department of Health spokesperson Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere said the World Health Organization has not yet released details on the apparent variant.
So, nagbigay din ng pahayag ang WHO over the weekend at ang sabi nila, they have not received the full details of this apparent variant na tinatawag sa Vietnam. At aantayin daw po nila na makapag-verify sila, makapag-aral ng mabuti para makapagbigay ng guidance para sa ating para sa mga member countries ng WHO. So for now, we still do not have sufficient evidence for this.
The WHO has so far identified 4 variants of concern. B.1.1.7, which was first detected in the UK, B.1.351, first reported in South Africa, B.1.1.281 or P1, first found in Brazilian travelers, and B.1.617, which was first confirmed in India. Vietnam's Health Minister Nguyen Thanh Long announced on Saturday the detection of the new variant, which is a combination of the Indian and British variants. The health official said lab tests suggested the hybrid variant might spread more easily than other versions of the virus. The DOH has repeatedly reminded the public to follow minimum public health protocols, while local governments are encouraged to strengthen the implementation of measures to stop the spread of the virus.
Kailangan natin lagi tandaan, whatever variants that there may be dito po sa ating bansa, kung tayo po ay strictly nagpapatupad ng health protocols natin at saka tayo ay nagpabakuna, tayo po ay protektado.
Janice Inhente, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippine Overseas Labor Office or POLO in Riyadh, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is purging delinquent recruitment agencies to mitigate incidences of welfare cases among overseas Filipino workers or OFWs, and to strengthen on-site verification of employers. Labor Attaché Fidel Macauyag said that in a month, 39 errant Saudi recruitment agencies and 18 companies were suspended by the Polo in Riyadh, while over 40 employers were already blacklisted. The official also said that the Polo has created a team of male welfare officers and support staff called Team Camel, which has been deployed to help save distressed OFWs. To ensure that companies are legitimate and are adhering to standards, Polo Riyadh is strictly implementing the on-site verification of companies as required by the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. The Philippines will be among the countries that will receive donated vaccines from the United States of America. Meanwhile, Malacanang refuses to answer if the U.S. vaccine surplus will affect the fate of visiting forces agreement. Rosalie Cos will tell us why.
The United States of America will provide 80 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to its allies and other nations needing the shots. According to Philippine Ambassador to the U.S. Jose Manuel Romualdez, the Philippines will be among the first countries to receive the surplus vaccines, but there are no details yet on the exact number of doses as well as the shipment date. Romualdez said the U.S. is not asking for anything from the Philippines in return for the donated vaccines.
We still don't know how many will be given to us, but this donation without any strings attached to it, so to speak. It's just really part of a program that they have that will start really helping other nations in being able to fight this virus.
Apart from this, some U.S. drug companies also expressed interest in having a joint venture with Philippine pharmaceutical companies on COVID-19 vaccine and other medical supplies. Meanwhile, the palace has no direct answer if the surplus vaccines will impact the decision of President Rodrigo Duterte on the Visiting Forces Agreement or VFA.
Hindi pa po natin alam kung meron talagang darating at kung magkano at ilan ang darating. So antayin muna po natin dumating. No?
According to Ambassador Romualdez, the U.S. is still hopeful that the bilateral agreement will be extended and the ties between the two countries will be further enhanced. He also mentioned the possibility of a meeting between the chief executives of the two nations.
Sumulat na nga si President Biden kay President Duterte not only on the occasion of the 75th anniversary, but to also to inform him about how strongly the relationship between the United States and the Philippines will continue, and that he hopes that he will be able to meet in person with the President at some point in time.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Department of Health is now allocating more COVID-19 vaccines to local government units in a form of incentive, but LGUs must qualify first before receiving the vaccines from the government. Aiko Miguel explains why.
Local government units that perform poorly on their vaccine rollout will not be given additional vaccine supply allocation according to the Health Department. The DOH and the vaccine cluster has been monitoring LGUs to assure that no COVID-19 vaccine supplies are kept for long in vaccine storage.
Ang ginawa ng ating vaccine cluster, I think for the past 2 weeks already, ginawa na nilang, tinitignan na nila yung performance ng local governments bago sila makapagbigay ng karagdagang alokasyon. So ito ay para i-incentivize ang ating mga local governments to perform better, na mas maitaas nila ang antas ng pagbabakuna para nare-receive nila yung kaukulang allocation nila. So as to the local governments which are doing well, they are constantly being recognized by the IATF members and through our regular meetings with the MMDA and the other concerned agency.
The DOH says that LGUs should work better to increase their daily vaccine outputs. The DOH once again pointed out that they are following a timeline for the inoculation of the second dose of COVID-19 vaccines, so this process cannot be rushed. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara cited an example like Sinovac that has an interval of 28 days from the inoculation of the first dose. AstraZeneca's second dose should be administered 12 weeks apart from the first dose of the vaccine.
Dahil gusto natin makuha yung full potential, ma-maximize natin yung efficacy na ibibigay ng bakuna na ito dahil sinasabi po sa pag-aaral that the longer the interval, up to 12 weeks nga, mas mataas po ang efficacy na ibibigay sa ating mga kababayan.
The DOH also explained the vaccine daily output is now 25 times more compared with that in March when the Philippines began its COVID-19 vaccination rollout. Currently, the 7-day daily average of vaccinees is over 144,000.
We have increased 25 times more than what we were doing when we started off vaccinating. Kailangan din pong maintindihan ng ating mga kababayan na ang ating pagbabakuna is highly dependent on the supplies that we have.
Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. reported that there will be 10 million doses expected to arrive in the country this June from various vaccine manufacturers. Those include the 2.3 million doses of Pfizer and 2 million doses of AstraZeneca that will come from the COVAX facility. On June 6, 1 million doses of Sinovac COVID-19 vaccines are expected to arrive in the country. Also, an initial shipment of 250,000 doses of Moderna vaccines is set to arrive on June 21. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For those watching our 24/7 live streaming on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook.
A senator wants an inquiry on the reported harassment and other unfair practices of some online lending companies to borrowers. Meanwhile, the SEC welcomes the move, noting that it is high time to update lending and financing laws of the country. Arlene Delgado will tell us why.
31-year-old Ganda Inyon could not imagine the embarrassment she suffered due to alleged unfair practice of an online lending company. According to her, she decided to try borrowing through the online application in April after her husband lost his work and her mother rushed to the hospital. They also had to undergo quarantine for 1 month after her brother contracted COVID-19. Inyon says she borrowed 5,500 pesos but she only received 3,600 pesos due to deductions and an interest of 770 pesos per day. She claims she communicated to the agent that she will pay the amount within the day, but instead, the company accessed her phone contacts and messaged them all about her unpaid loan.
Nagte-text kami, tinatawagan ko sila na hindi ko kaya ng cut-off nyo ng 3 p.m. So I think mga 5 p.m. na lang or mga 4, mga ganyan. After lahat ng mga gagawin ko. Ang ginawa nila ma'am, nag-text blast sila sa lahat ng phone book ko. Tinatakbuhan ko daw yung utang ko, which is hindi naman talaga ganun yung nangyari.
Inyon paid over 6,000 pesos to settle the amount, but until now, she says, agents keep sending her messages.
Tapos mayroon akong emotional breakdown that time. Parang gusto ko nang mag-suicide kasi nakakahiya eh. Lahat sa opisina ko, may mga tinatawagan pa sila na time to time na magbayad daw ako. Dapat paglaban natin kung yung karapatan natin.
Senator Sherwin Gatchalian plans to file a resolution seeking for an inquiry into the emergence of loan sharks and online lending schemes. According to the senator, his office continues to receive complaints from victims of online lending companies who have suffered grave threats, intimidation, and public shaming from debt collectors. Meanwhile, the Securities and Exchange Commission or SEC welcomes the move. The commission confirms the number of complaints they received have increased during the pandemic. Suspension and revocation of licenses have also been issued to erring lending companies. Attorney Rachel Gumantang Remalante of the SEC believes there is a need to review the lending laws to keep up with the modern world, such as the advent of technology. Another is to increase the penalties. Currently, erring lending companies could face a penalty of 25,000 up to 50,000 pesos and up to 100,000 pesos for financial companies.
If we want to discipline and to put to put the airing entity or airing company on the right track. Pagka medyo mas masakit yung penalty mo na in terms of monetary, I think mas maganda yon. But right now, medyo limited tayo sa amount.
The SEC reminds the public to also exercise due diligence by checking the legitimacy of the online lending companies and also to understand the terms of the loan before agreeing to them. Borrowers who are experiencing unfair practices from debt collectors can also file a complaint through their website www.sec.gov.ph. Meanwhile, in February, the National Privacy Commissioner NPC also recommended the prosecution of an operator of an online lending application for violating the Data Privacy Act. Jorlene Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God. The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP, placed the Luzon grid under yellow alert status. In an advisory, the NGCP said the Luzon grid will be under yellow alert from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. A yellow alert means that the grid has thin reserves based on the supply and demand, but does not necessarily mean power outages. Earlier, a red alert was raised from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. The NGCP reported that available power reserve is only at 11,419 megawatts, but this day's peak demand is at 10,439 megawatts. The Department of Energy attributed the increasing power requirement to the higher heat index.
News abroad. South Africa prepares for a potential third wave of COVID cases as restrictions are being reimposed to limit movement of the population. Marvi Delphine tells us the details live. Yes, Marvi?
LC, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, announced that his country will return to stricter lockdown measures in the face of a sharp rise in COVID-19 cases that indicate the virus is surging again. The country recorded 4,550 new cases over the past 24 hours, prompting a fast response with the implication of Alert Level 2. Curfews from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. and restrictions like non-essential establishments to close at 10 p.m. being enforced today. This comes with religious and political gatherings also being restricted, with 250 people outdoors and 100 indoors. The prohibition of alcohol and cigarette sales, like last year, were also enforced to limit movement of individuals. This anticipated third wave has highlighted that around 1.5% of the population have only been vaccinated. However, the government has claimed that they have purchased doses for 40 million of its 59 million population. The president, though, insists that they are attempting their all in self-producing their own vaccine. In the African continent, South Africa has experienced the worst, with 1.65 million cases and 56,363 deaths since the pandemic began. Elsie?
Thank you, Marvi, for that live report. Canada's Prime Minister asked all federal buildings' flags be flown at half-mast after children's remains have been found buried at what once was the largest Indigenous residential school in Canada. Mavian Dog will give us the details live. Maeve?
LC, the discovery of 215 children's bodies as young as 3 buried near the Kamloops Indian Residential School in Canada was described as gruesome and unthinkable. Last weekend, Chief Roseanne Casimir of the Kamloops Indian Band confirmed the buried remains with the aid of ground-penetrating radar. And to their knowledge, these children are undocumented deaths. LC, from the late 19th century to the late 1970s, 150,000 First Nations children were taken from their families to attend state-funded schools as part of a program to assimilate them into the Canadian society. Many of them were said to be beaten, verbally abused, and have died. To honor the lives of these children, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asked all federal buildings' flags be flown half-mast. People were also seen placing children's shoes as memorials in front of churches and government buildings that once ran these residential schools. LC plans are being put into motion to identify and repatriate the children's remains on the site with the help of forensic experts. Meanwhile, Indigenous opposition legislator Solma Macwa calls for the province and Canadian government to work with all First Nations, in keeping with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's Missing Children projects, and search every former residential schools for remains. Elsie?
Thank you, Mavian Dog, live from Australia. Israel's foreign minister visited Egypt for the first time in 13 years to hold talks on strengthening the truce between Israel and Hamas and rebuilding the bombed territory. Queenie Rivera will give us the details live. Go ahead, Queenie.
Elsie. Israel's Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi landed in Cairo, Egypt on Sunday in a formal visit with his Egyptian counterpart, Foreign Minister Sami Shukri. This visit was deemed as the first in over a decade in a joint effort to discuss a permanent ceasefire with Hamas and reconstruction of Gaza, which was ruined during the 11-day war with more than 250 people killed. In a statement released by the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, it was stressed in the discussions the need to refrain from all actions that could lead to further escalations in the Palestinian territories, with all Islamic and Christian holy sites. Shukri also restated the position of Egypt that the only way to achieve long-lasting peace is by two-state solution. Meanwhile, the leaders of a far-right and centrist party confirmed on Sunday that they were seeking to form a governing coalition in Israel. If successful, their coalition would unseat Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his center-right Likud party for the first time since 2009. Elsie?
Thank you, Queenie, for that report. And those are the reasons behind the news in other parts of the globe. I am Elsie Marcos, live from Auckland, New Zealand. Good evening.
A lawmaker raised questions over the recent committee approval, which approved a 25-year legislative franchise for Manila Water Company Incorporated and Maynilad Water Services Incorporated. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
The House of Legislative Franchise Committee approved last week the franchise of Maynilad Water Service and Manila Water Corporation. The committee approved on its first hearing House Bill number 9367 filed by Ako Bicol Party List Representative Alfredo Garbin Jr. and House Bill number 9313 filed by Cavite Representative Elpidio Barsaga Jr., both seeking a 25-year franchise from Maynilad and Manila Water. However, Bagong Henerasyon Party List Representative and House Deputy Speaker Bernadette Herrera noted gray areas between the revised concession agreement or RCA the two firms entered recently with the government as well as the legislative franchise bills. The RCA allows the two water firms to retain from concession areas until 2037 or 16 years from now, but the bills seek to grant a 25-year franchise to each water concessionaire. The lady lawmaker also asked what would happen to the franchise given to the water concessionaires if both did not win the bid for concession.
Pwede kasing gray area yun eh. Tapos kung sinasabi ng author na mag-bid pa rin sila, paano kung hindi sila nanalo? Ano mangyayari sa franchise nila na sinigay ng Congress? Diba? Kasi pwede nilang constitutional. Remember, the law is more superior sa agreement.
The party list legislator also wants to clarify who would regulate the concerns of the public if the MWSS would not be included in the bill.
Tatakbo yung mga mamamayan. Pag wala, nagputulan sila ng tubig. Paano pag wala, tatakbo pa sila sa Congress?
Herrera further questioned the absence of a provision for dispute resolution in the committee level approved bills. The lawmaker said both House bills should have been subjected to closer scrutiny in order to protect the welfare of the public. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Tourism orders strict monitoring of staycation hotels and other accommodation establishments in areas under general community quarantine that are allowed to operate up to 100% of its venue capacity. Asha Gadapan Jr. tells us why.
Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat wants to make sure that operations of hotels and other accommodation establishments will not cause further spread of COVID-19. This as the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases allows staycation to establishments under corresponding restrictions. Based on IATF Resolution 117, DOT-accredited accommodation establishments with Certificate of Authority to Operate for Staycation or CAOS will be allowed to accept guests at up to 30% capacity, while those with CAOS will still be able to accept staycation guests at up to 100% capacity. Guests will not be obliged to undergo COVID-19 tests, but strict symptom screening should be conducted. Accommodation establishments should only allow individuals aged 18 to 65 years old, and if they are staying as a group, they should be from the same household. Secretary Puyat said that they will continue to issue reminders to owners of establishments for the safety of guests and host communities. Despite the order, Puyat welcomes the said decision of the IATF, which she explains will bring back significant revenue, especially of small hotels and private resorts in areas placed under GCQ. The Octa Research Group, however, says stringent implementation of protocols should be observed in reopening more business operations, particularly hotels, to avoid surge in COVID-19 cases.
Yung ating trending sa NCR plan ay hindi pa stable, no? Hindi pa siya talagang bumababa ng continuous, no? In fact, bumagal nga ang pag-decrease ng reproduction number natin. Ang ating panawagan talaga ay yung mga facility management, no, whether hotel man yan o restaurant man o kaya opisina, no, ay i-heighten din nila yung kanilang COVID-19 minimum health standards at yung guidelines, no, to protect the company and the employees from getting infected, no.
Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
The Philippines' cumulative tally of novel coronavirus disease cases has climbed to 1,230,301 after the Department of Health or DOH reported 6,684 additional infections. In its latest bulletin, the DOH said the latest tally pushed the country's active cases to 54,290. Of these cases, 93.3% are mild, 2.2% are asymptomatic, 1.28% are moderate, 1.8% are severe, and 1.4% are in critical condition. The DOH noted in its report that 3 testing laboratories failed to submit their data on time. Total recoveries climbed to 1,155,045 after 6,098 more patients recuperated from the viral respiratory disease. The death toll rose to 20,966 with 107 new fatalities.
The Department of Justice has clarified that the existing laws or ordinances of local government units will still be the basis for the arrest of health protocol violators. Dante Amento tells us why.
The existing laws and ordinances issued by local government units are direct and fit for all the violations committed in the implementation of health protocols. Thus, Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara says they have recommended that primary basis of the arrest of violators such as not wearing or improper wearing of face mask is the existing ordinances of LGUs. Guevara adds law enforcers must know the prevailing ordinances in their areas. Guevara points out that authorities could not arrest somebody for a certain violation if there is no existing law. The DOJ says that the joint guidelines still awaiting signatures of DILG Secretary Eduardo Año and PNP Chief Guillermo Eleazar, and that the guidelines will be probably released tomorrow. Meanwhile, the sale of vaccination slot is not incorporated in the guidelines because it is already covered by our existing laws. Violators who will be caught doing such act by selling for gain will be held liable under the Food and Drug Administration or FDA law. COVID-19 vaccines are still not allowed to be sold commercially. But Guevara clarifies, local government units may issue an ordinance to penalize over the sales of vaccination slots. Dantiamento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The government is urging senior citizens who have been fully vaccinated to remain inside their homes as the risk of COVID-19 remains. JP Nunez explains why.
70-year-old Soledad Ruiz has been staying inside her home for more than a year in Malabon City. Before, she manages to take Zumba activities with her fellow seniors. But since it's still prohibited, she cannot even go out with her family.
Siyempre, unang-una, bonding ng family, lalabas kami, kakain kami. Tapos, yung kinagisnan ko na nagsusumba ko sa twice a week, siyempre, sa kalusugan natin, madadagdagan ng ating immune system. Sabi nga, pagka kasi nakaupo ka lang, nasa bahay ka lang, para bang sinasakal ka, tsaka nakakainip, kaya mas gusto ko nakakalabas. Parang bilanggo ayoko ng bilanggo.
Earlier, National Commission on Senior Citizens Chairperson Franklin Quijano urged the national government to allow the elderly like Soledad who have been fully vaccinated to go out to help boost the economy and for their total wellness.
We believe that sa gabi, pagka nilinis lang ang lahat ng grocery stores, ang lahat ng malls, ang lahat ng mga pharmacies, pag malinis lang yan sa gabi, we hope that we will be allowed the first 2 hours in the morning. Soon as it is open, at kung kami lang ang papayagan inside the malls, the grocery stores, and the pharmacies for the first 2 hours in the morning, we know that we will be able to spend and help in the rebound of this economy.
The group is also campaigning for the early voting of seniors for the 2022 elections.
In the mornings kasi, when the atmosphere is clearer and safer, then the senior citizens would be able to go out na wala namang maraming toxins. And then of course, after the senior citizens, the rest of the populace who are stronger and more immune can come in.
However, the national government may consider further relaxing the protocols for seniors once the country achieves vaccinating 50 or 60% of the population.
Pero yung pagpapalabas po after the vaccination, tingin ko po depende yan kung maa-achieve na natin yung population protection. No? Ibig sabihin, hindi lang naman po yung mga may bakuna ang pwede magkaroon ng protection. Kinakailangan mas marami pa sa populasyon na magkakaroon ng protection dahil ang bakuna po is not a guarantee na hindi na kayo tatamaan ng COVID. It is a guarantee na siguro hindi kayo magkakasakit ng malala o hindi kayo mamamatay, pero iba po ang kondisyon ng mga seniors. They are especially vulnerable.
The palace official further clarified that seniors are not completely prohibited from leaving their homes, especially if they will buy their essentials. JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte will have his regular talk to the people tonight, where he is expected to announce the quarantine classifications across the country for the month of June. Please stay tuned here at UNTV as we will broadcast it live on TV and on our social media accounts.
And those are the reasons behind the news, May 31, 2021. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am Harleen Delgado.
Because we need to know. We will always ask why. I'm Angelo Castro III. We serve the people. We give glory to God.